Hello, everybody. Hmm. Good to see you all. Aloha. Well, thanks to everyone who helped hold the space for the last few weeks while we were teaching in New Mexico, or Michelle and I still are for another day. And thanks for everyone who just continued to sit together and support each other's practice in that way. It means a lot. So good to see you all, and we'll be back
next Sunday.
Back home next Sunday. Yeah. So.
And then I'll have a full view. I'm on my cell phone. So. Well, we've missed you, and it's great to see you again. Let's just get started. So I hope you're in a reasonable sitting position right now. Closing your eyes. And just let your attention just kind of settle around your body on the surface of your skin. You might notice the pressure or hardness where your sit bones are touching your bench or cushion, chair, or lying. And we're going to start with connecting with our intention to be caring and kind as best we can with whatever's appearing. So if you care to put your fingers or palm of your hand on your heart center, I'm doing that. The idea is to just receive, again, as best you can, it's a very quiet, easeful care, kindness. A wish for ease of well-being. The emphasis being on whatever's happening, and even if it's numbness, like that you care about the numbness or the disconnect. Just whatever's happening in your life, mind, body, heart. Noticing if you can call up some easeful care. And of course, can we receive it? Sometimes letting that ease or kindness or care come in with the rising movement of the breath. kindness with the falling movement of the breath. So there's a metta or kindness, compassion field of awareness around us, in us. And then bringing our attention to hearing. Wherever we are receiving the textures and vibrations of the sounds, particularly noticing the textures and vibrations of the silence. And the sounds. And of course, there will be thoughts about the sounds. So we just notice that thinking is happening, no problem. But when you notice that, just seeing if you can just bring the attention back to hearing. Directly, textures and vibrations coming and going by themselves, not through the thought process. So there's this gradual dropping into the non-doing awareness, the non-conceptual awareness. Sounds coming and going by themselves. No need to do anything with them, fix them, control them. Just letting them be themselves. And often there's that ease of non-doing when we shift to our hands. We're receiving the physical sensations, just like sounds. And again, thoughts about the sensations might come and go by themselves. And just bringing the attention back to the receptive awareness, receiving the changing textures, vibration. No need to fiddle with, fix, control, manipulate. And shifting to the movement of our breath at the abdomen. And with that understanding, each moment is new. There's never again the same breath. It's just like listening to music, but we're listening for receiving the sensations just as they appear. And notice if we can connect with them, the attention with them, carried by them till the end of the rising. Attention carried by the sensations in the falling movement, just as they are. And at times, just letting the attention go with the flow of awareness, sixth sense door moment, moment to moment experience. Maybe a few sounds, body sensation, thinking, breath, emotion. And sometimes, inevitably, the attention will get lost in a thought or thinking. And sometimes it's skillful means to re-anchor again with hearing, hands, or breath. But other times we might just let the attention drop right in to that flow of sixth sense door moment to moment experience. They're both good practice, not one better than the other. It's just skillful means. Quiet, easeful, and sometimes kind awareness. May we be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May we be happy and peaceful of heart. May we be strong and healthy of body. May we take care of ourselves happily while living on this earth.
Thank you, Michelle. So as most of you know, Michelle and I have been teaching for the last few weeks at Vallecitos out here outside of Taos, New Mexico. And some of the yogis are here today who just came off of a retreat. Good to see you. Hope you're integrating okay. I know it's always powerful to kind of have that long on retreat and in silence, and then kind of come back out into the human world and encounter so much that we've been protected from, and a lot of it is really wonderful and a lot of it is really hard. Michelle and I have had the good fortune of being in Santa Fe for a few days during the annual Indian market, which is in its 102nd year. It's amazing, where basically like the most incredible indigenous artisans, artists, craftspeople are invited to kind of come show and compete and sell, their works of art for this weekend every year. And so it's incredible, it's really an amazing thing. We've never been before, and we always know that this retreat ends kind of around the time that market happens. So we decided to check it out this year, and it's quite a way actually to come off of a retreat. And it's still intense. There's still a lot of people. It's still quite overwhelming just in terms of the, quantity of people here in the streets and the, out coming down from the mountains. But to come down to like the most beautiful aspect of humanity, is actually quite wonderful, even if it's a lot of stimulation. It's just amazing, the caliber of work and of creativity and of pride and recognition, and of course how much the beauty of recognizing how much incredible knowledge has been passed down through untold generations, and through so much hardship and strain, how much has been lost and how much effort people have put into trying to relearn, so many of these ancient skills and crafts, and really beautiful to come back out of retreat into that experience. And, and that it's coming to an end. And, it isn't like the news isn't there also in the background, and it isn't like we know, most folks who have come off of retreat haven't come to a not quite such a sort of heaven realm as Indian market. We see so much of the hardship in the world, and then of course everyone who has not been on retreat and has been in the thick of it. We know, of course we know the full range. And so I wanted to just talk a little of like something that came up on retreat. So for the folks who are at Vyasita, some of this you'll remember some of this material, but hopefully it'll have new, fresh meaning. And for those of you who have not been on retreat, hopefully it'll, be supportive in one way or another. There was something else I was reading in a talk, and I realized there was a footnote that referred to the nine grounds for the 9 causes of irritation or hatred, in the commentary. So I thought I should go check out what are those nine grounds for irritation, 9 grounds for hatred, for annoyance, depending on how you translate the word. And so this is from the Anguttara Nikaya. The Buddha describes 9 grounds for hatred. Thinking, this person has done me harm, one binds hatred. Or this person is doing me harm, one binds hatred. Or this person is going to do me harm, one binds hatred. Or this person has done harm to people who are dear and pleasing to me, one binds the hatred. This person is doing harm to people who are near and pleasing to me, one binds hatred. Or this person is going to do harm to people who are near, dear, and pleasing to me, one binds to hatred. Or thinking, this person has aided people who are not dear or pleasing to me, one binds hatred. Or this person is aiding people who are not dear or pleasing to me, one binds hatred. Or this person is going to aid people who are not dear or pleasing to me, one binds hatred. And we just think about the world that we're in, and the news we receive, and the relationships that we're a part of. Just like, how common is it that some version of this person has done me harm, or is doing me harm, or is going to, or has harmed the people I care about, or will harm the people I care about, or is helping the people I don't care about. I mean, we look at our tendency it's so powerful and so understandable, right? I mean, I think there is, this part of like what I find moving about this sutta is it's not like unreasonable. It's for the most part, it is because of the threat of harm, to ourselves or others, that has happened, that is happening, or that we believe or fear will happen, that is the cause for so much bitterness and anger. And from that, depending on the degree of harm, depending on the scale of it, depending on all kinds of things, from mild irritation and annoyance to rage and hatred. How common these tendencies are, these patterns are. And then how fortunate that the next sutta describe the 9 ways of subduing hatred. And so the 9 ways of subduing hatred are thinking, this person has done me harm, but what should I expect? One subdues hatred. They translate it differently in different places, but this person is doing me harm. Why should it be otherwise? One subdues hatred. They are going to do me harm. What should I expect? They are doing harm to people who are dear and pleasing to me. They have done harm to them. They will do harm to them. What should I expect? How could it be otherwise? Why should it be otherwise? And it's a very I think most people, including myself, reading that, it's like not necessarily exactly what we would imagine the answer would be in terms of how to subdue hatred. It's like this person is creating harm, but what should I expect? And how profound that is. And it's a reminder that this is not the only means by which the Buddha described how to relate to anger or how to counter it. What are the forces at play? But to recognize that there is something that the Buddha is almost mostly concerned with how are we protecting and developing our own minds in regard to the undependability of the world, right? How are we cultivating beautiful qualities of heart given the undependability of things, the unpredictability of things? And this framework of this person is harming, these people are harming, that person will harm me, those I care about, or they're helping the people I don't care about, or they're helping the people that I also hate, but what should I expect? How could it be otherwise? Some people translate it as, but what could I do, right? It all brings to mind like a very different kind of consideration of the world and our lives and our roles in it, and ultimately something very powerful about like the nature of conditionality. At the end of our retreat, there was sometimes like people will sometimes ask, like, oh, especially 2 weeks, being gone 2 weeks is, it's a long time without news or without kind of input about what's happening in the world. So this question of like, is there any news? And it's like, to end 2 weeks and to be like, everything in the news, like everything that might have happened in the last 2 weeks falls into the category of like, well, what did you expect? I mean, really, right? There's like pretty much you're like, oh, okay, well, you could, not that you couldn't imagine things maybe playing out a little bit differently one way or another, but you're like, all right, well, what did you think was going to happen with this thing? What do you think was going to happen? Maybe once in a while we're like truly surprised, but at this point, we're pretty jaded about a lot. And some of that actually, of course, has a nihilism and has a negative sort of quality of hopelessness, but some of it is like based in our true and wise understanding of like, yeah, when this person acts this way, this person acts that way. When these people do this, those people do that. And when these people do this to those people do this to these people. And when this, like you see the pinball, you get it. I doubt there is very much of the people who are just sitting for the last 2 weeks came back to the news and were like, that's really surprising. It's like, so this sense of like that answer of like, well, what should you expect might not be satisfying to certain parts of ourselves, but there is something of the recognition of understanding karma, right? Of understanding that actions have consequences, and most of the time that's not that surprising, right? What are the results of this action? What are the results of that action? We understand that people are complicated and people are wounded and people harm because of mostly their inability to feel the pain of those wounds and find ways of externalizing it. So then there is this question of like, it's the dual question of like the wisdom perspective of, well, what do we expect? And then what is the response? Like, what is there to be done? What is the response to these things? And to see the like really powerful ways that I think the teachings can offer us some guidance around that, of but rooted in that sense of wisdom, right? Rooted in the understanding of the complexity of social human interactions and the long trajectory of momentum of how these things play out, and how so much of our behavior, of course, leads to more harm and people behaving in more harmful ways, people causing more harm to each other, to us, to whomever, the people we care about, the people we don't care about, whatever sort of our little, slice of the perspective is. Where is that ability to be sober about that truth? Well, yeah. Well, why should we expect otherwise? How could things be otherwise? And then the question of, well, then what are we called to do? What is to be done? And again, in a very tightly woven framework of the many things that are worth talking about, it's, I feel like we can never overstate the importance of the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. And it's in these places where we really can see that we have to cut through any notion we have that like these are like the soft, easy parts of the practice, and that we want to get to the wisdom part, and we need to get to insight, versus the discipline it takes to not hate in a world that's full of people harming each other, harming us, harming people we care about, supporting people that are harming other people, right? The ferociousness of the discipline it takes to not hate in that world, in this environment, to stop that sense of inevitability. Like, what cuts that chain of inevitability of like, well, what do you expect when someone does this to them, and this they just to me, and you just to me, and then right, and the chain keeps unfolding, right? The cycle keeps rolling. Samsara keeps finding its momentum, right? The incredible discipline and effort it takes to try to maintain goodness in the heart, maintain a connection to our own care, and see the ways that may break chains of habitual patterns and of harm and of violence, of greed, of ignorance in the world around us, to whatever degree may be possible based on the unknowability of karma and the unfathomability of it, but certainly in our own hearts that those chains can be broken, right? That the wheel can be cut. And so metta, loving kindness, this we have been harmed. People we care about have been harmed, right? People who we think are not good are being helped. What is our responsibility in terms of action, but in terms of our heart? And then where do those two things link up? What are the limits of our ability to care, right? To feel friendliness toward all beings. We really, to really hold that as an aspiration and reflect on what it means, but try to experience what that means in our own hearts. What does it mean to not bear hatred towards anyone? What does it mean to be kind-hearted, to wish well, to value to recognize the worthiness of any being for the kindness in our hearts? How hard that is, how unbelievably important that is, and beautiful that is. And we may not feel close to that saintliness. And we, for anyone who has practiced with us, it's like, we don't suggest that you, when you're doing your metta practice, that you just bring in the hardest person for you to, love into your practice. And try to, it's like we always say, go with the easiest, go with the easiest, stay with the easiest. Build that strength and that connection with the easiest, right? And then you start to explore the neutral, you start to explore kind of the more distant ones that we're really close to, but maybe more clinging toward, eventually, yes, there's a practice of like trying to intentionally bring the kindness towards the difficult people. Other times it might just sort of happen spontaneously. So, we're not the ones that say you should be sitting there trying to bring loving kindness to your greatest enemy or the person you think is responsible for, however much harm, or will be responsible for whatever harm, or was responsible for whatever harm. There are good reasons why our hearts aren't able to stretch all the way, but that doesn't mean we should just be self-righteous about that. You know what I mean? Like you're still, it just means your metta isn't strong enough. It's a failure of our metta. And we have to recognize that and not be like defending our position. And that may be a failure that lasts a long time, but to understand that like the heart does have the capacity to do that. The heart has the capacity to care for all beings. And just to be clear, it doesn't mean you have to like them. Right? There's like a difference between kindness and the worthiness of love and actually liking someone. It doesn't mean you condone their behavior if it's harmful. It doesn't mean you don't protect yourself or other people from their behavior. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, it doesn't have to do with their behavior either. But that the heart can do this is important to know, and to know where we fall short of the goal. That's all. And that it's possible, and that sometimes it happens. But that we might not recognize actually that quality of care that also doesn't have to that doesn't have to let down our guard, that doesn't have to recognize the harm that someone might have created. It doesn't mean we forgive them. And so then what is that quality of care and love and friendliness that might be there, that might be available? If we realize it doesn't have to mean all of these other things, where might it be? And there's compassion. The unavoidable truth is that most of the time, it's like when people are in their most pain, they behave in the ways that inspire the least sympathy. And not just the most pain, but when they're like hungry, right? People get irritable, right? Or annoying, or when they're tired, or it's like there are a lot of small kinds of pain that cause us to behave in ways that are not easy to love, but often it's the most agonizing pain, right, that people aren't able to be with, that cause them to behave in ways that make us so reactive, or make other people so reactive, or are the least easy to find our connection to their suffering, to their hardship, to where there's agony, and how this behavioral defense against their own ability to feel it, of course, makes it hard for anyone else to feel it. It's not the only reason people behave badly or harm other people, but it is important to start there, to recognize of like, wow, what must be going on for this person for them to harbor those feelings, right? To be willing to harm other people through their behavior. And that willingness of, can we feel compassion? Can we feel the truth of that agony, of the suffering of another person that might be causing their behavior, right? to not see another person as a human being, to, to do whatever they may be doing. How far from their own humanity, how far from their own ability, their own sense of worthiness, their own ability to care for themselves or anyone must they be in order to treat anyone such a way. Again, it doesn't mean we have to like them. It doesn't mean we have to forgive them. It doesn't mean we have to not do what we do to protect ourselves or others against misbehavior and harm. But it's like to remember that we're also defending our own hearts against the toxicity of hatred, of anger, and the potential for actions to be rooted in that. And then mudita, appreciation, appreciative joy. It is, technically it's considered the destroyer of aversion. That's its mechanism, is to just obliterate aversion by appreciating the joy in our lives or in other people's lives. And, it's like we have to understand these are trainings, these are disciplines. It is not about, oh, we're going to ignore this suffering. This is too overwhelming, so I'm just going to focus on the positive, right? It isn't like a delusional or avoidance or a kind of Pollyannish relationship with reality. It's an understanding that sometimes the mind, the heart is so, that channel into anger, that channel into hatred, into resentment, into rage is dug so clearly that we need the discipline of orienting the mind towards the beautiful, towards the pleasant, towards the joy and the happiness in other people's lives, right? Towards seeing the value of goodness, and generosity of, and the role it plays in creating happiness. And how beautiful that is, and how important that is, and how much people need to be the recipients of generosity, of kindness, of compassion, of patience. I was telling folks, it's like the word mudita, it's related to mudita. It's like this idea of malleability, of pliability. It's the same word root in the Indo-European kind of language groups of mud, M-U-D, right? Mud, mudita. It's that sense of pliability, of plasticity, whereas it's not this, it keeps the mind from getting tight, from getting restricted, from getting tense, from getting rigid, right? And you can, of course, you feel that defense against the rigidity of anger and hatred, right, in the heart, and keeping it pliable and not forgetting that the pain of these things is real. The pain of human suffering is so real. And yet, if we can't also connect to the joy, that's possible in the human life, in ours or in others, see the goodness in that, appreciate the goodness of that. And that sense of that we share in the goodness, that joy doesn't belong to me or to anyone, that there is this shared quality in it, right? That is buoyant, that is beautiful, that destroys aversion, that protects our hearts from going down that path. And then, of course, equanimity, right? This is what it is. Actions have results. And many of them are out of our control. What is in our control is how we behave now, given that this has happened, given that this has happened to us, to other people, to whatever. What we have control over starts now, right? In terms of what's motivating. But the cascade of past actions is befalling us, and befalling everyone. And this is what is, and this is the reality. This is the nature of things. Of course, what did we expect, right? How could we expect otherwise, given everything? of course this is the way things are, right? Given everything forever, of course this is how things are, you know? And it's sober, but it's also not overwrought, right? It recognizes the pain, it recognizes the joy, it recognizes the uncontrovertible truth that actions have results, right? That our actions do matter, and that there are things that get set in motion that can't just be stopped. Some things can be mitigated, and other things have an incredible force of momentum behind them in our lives individually, in our lives collectively. It's the deepest aspect of faith, is ownership of action, right? Individually and collectively. And it's like most times, I think, in at least in English language, there's a conflation of faith with hope, right? Like, oh, I have faith this will happen, or I have hope this will happen. That they mean the same thing, but it's not really at all what faith is. Like, in the deepest faith is the total relinquishment of all hope, right? It's just in the inevitability of the actions and their consequences is the deepest faith in the truth. And that gives us each the most profound responsibility that we could imagine in terms of what are our actions. You know, what is motivating this next moment of speech, of thought, of physical gesture? Knowing that every action has consequences, right? Largely rooted in the volitional quality of the mind and that is impelling it forward, you know. And so that is this, you know, beautiful and overwhelming dilemma we find ourselves in, right? This person has harmed me, this person is harming me, this person will harm me, or the people I care about, or is helping the people I think are my enemies. Of course, that's happening. And what is my responsibility? How do we respond? You know, what is the role of wisdom and of love? How important it is to have access to these beautiful teachings, you know, these beautiful qualities of the Brahma Viharas, of understanding that they are a training, you know, that we will fall short a lot of the time, you know, we will have remorse for the motivation of a word we said impatiently, you know, or a way we might have treated someone or ourselves, you know, caught up in the turmoil of aversion. You know, as long it's like the sooner we see it, the sooner we recognize it, the sooner we can try to repair, make amends, try to heal whatever wounds we've caused with ourselves or with one another, and use that quality, right? That carefulness, that desire to not harm and to not be harmed ourselves, right? To know that ultimately we have this phenomenal responsibility around our own hearts and minds and what direction things move in. And sometimes that's about simply observing and watching the flow of conditioned reality unfold in our six sense doors. And sometimes that is a discipline about pulling the mind away from its tendencies and orienting it towards what we know is wholesome and good and beautiful for the world and for ourselves. Mm. So yeah, it's like we, how many years have we this like way of like, wow, things are intense, things are getting intense. It's like we've been saying that for quite a while now. you know it's like, oh, now it's just the thermostat keeps going up, right? It's like, okay, what did we expect? What are we to do? No? So do good. Do as good as we can is what we'll do. Yeah. uh, well, that'll be it for today. Thank you for showing up, for listening. Really wonderful to see everybody. We look forward to getting home. Yeah, and just, yeah, look forward to seeing you again next Sunday. So take good care, everyone.